Welcome back to Lush Life No Labels, a podcast where I talk about the struggles and joys of self improvement, anywhere from relationships, career, wellness, and more. I'm Fatu. Today's episode and story of the week is inspired by one of my favorite comedy TV shows of the early 2000s called Parks and Recreation. I've seen this show many, many times and I like to rewatch it a lot. But I specifically want to call out two characters, Donna Meagle and Tom Haverford, who coined the phrase treat yourself. I believe in one of the episodes starting in 2011. And treat yourself was basically one day a year where they spent the day treating themselves, really across the board, to anything like clothes, fragrances, massages, even fine leather goods. For them, it was the best day of the year. Y'all, they even had a jingle for this day. It was pretty entertaining to watch on TV, and I was rewatching one of those clips this week, which is what inspired this episode. And in that episode, notably, they would use it as a way to overspend. But when I think about treating myself, I don't necessarily think that we need to overspend in order to treat ourselves. Do I think we all should have one day where we spend whatever we want? If you have the money, sure. But for me, if it's done right, treating yourself can be a good way to take a break or relieve stress without breaking the bank. So let's talk about it. What does it mean to treat yourself? I'm sure we all have different definitions of this phrase, but to me, like I mentioned, it doesn't mean overindulgence or overconsumption. I see it more as a way to refresh, to boost my mood, and to give my brain and body time to rest. Treating yourself is an intentional action, not something that should be done with no control. In the US, we already have a lot of overconsumption. Now, it's none of my business what people like to spend their own money on, but overindulgence goes beyond treating yourself. Treating yourself is kind of giving yourself a pick me up. For example, sometimes I'll see these social media influencers doing clothing hauls where they buy 10 plus shirts in one sitting, knowing they probably won't wear most of those. Or I see celebrities having five, six cars, knowing realistically they won't be using most of them. Even cases where people go shopping every week, every month for clothes, shoes, video games, even pieces of technology. Those are too extreme for me, but there are many other ways to treat yourself where you don't need to break the bank. It doesn't mean you need to overspend, but I actually see treating myself as an intentional form of maintenance. And I'll come back to that later on. There are some very light ways to treat yourself, and actually some ways that I have known people to do that I would have never thought about. Sometimes as a treat, I'll just buy an ice cream cone if it's hot outside and I'm there. Plain and simple, not too much, but it's something. I have a friend who likes to buy fresh flowers because she likes the way they look at her place, and the smell of fresh flowers improves her mood. In another case, I worked with someone who would take off Friday afternoons in the summer. She didn't work for a company that did summer Fridays, so she would take a couple of hours of PTO to wind down and take an afternoon nap. For her, that was a treat because Monday through Friday, that work week was pretty busy, and she noticed she was extremely tired by the end of Friday when the workday was done. That would lead her to pretty much sleeping or trying to sleep for the rest of the weekend. But she noticed that if she could take that nap and just take the Friday afternoon off just to rest, then she wouldn't be sleeping for the rest of the weekend. It would give her a chance to refuel, which I thought was actually pretty smart. I might try to implement that at some point. I'll actually share a quick story about me. A few months ago, I was feeling completely in a spiral and feeling burnt out. Work was busy, life things were busy, and it felt like I was just moving through every day with no breaks. I kept trying to push through and get everything done that I needed to get done, but I was failing miserably. Nothing was working, and I was kind of doing things pretty sloppily. So instead of pushing harder, I got to a point where my brain, I just could not function anymore. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to put this down. I'm not getting anywhere here. Instead of keeping circling and just continuing to waste time, I'm just going to do something for fun. I gave myself permission to do something for fun. I bought a movie ticket in the middle of the day. I think it was a Marvel movie that was out at the time, maybe Captain America. The movie itself was forgettable. I don't even remember most of the plot of the movie, but guess what? I felt more recharged when those credits were rolling than I did when I first walked into the theater. I felt mentally rested, but also physically rested. My shoulders were less tense. Overall, I just felt pretty relaxed. As someone who likes escapism as a form of relaxing and distracting myself from the craziness of life, this was the perfect treat. I like to watch sci-fi and fantasy movies specifically in the theater if it's a movie plot that I like, but I only like going under certain circumstances because it being a treat only makes sense to me in this way. I like to go when there's barely anyone in the movie, not during premieres, not during busy weekend nights. I actually prefer to go a few weeks after a movie has premiered so the hype has died down. Also, I specifically like to go during matinee time, which is usually between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. Most people don't go to the movies at that time. So, in many cases, it's much less crowded, maybe less than 10 people overall on average. And I've actually had a few times when I had the theater to myself, which is just chef's kiss. Like I said, that's a treat to me because when I'm there by myself or if there are just two of us, it makes me feel like I am in my own private movie theater. Also, because there are fewer people who might talk during the movie, there are no phones out. There's a sense of peacefulness in an empty theater that I get, especially when those lights are dim, it's quiet, and just having a few hours where I can shut my brain off and just pay attention to whatever fantasy thing is happening on the screen. I can really go into that world and leave my world behind for a little bit, my crazy world behind for a little bit. That just gives me such a sense of fulfillment because once I am done with the movie, my head is more relaxed and I can actually get back to the work that I was attempting to do before. And that's what happened the first time that I did this. Like I said, I basically came to a brain block, went to the movie, came back, and then finally was like, okay, I can sit down and finish the rest of this now that I've had just a little bit of a breather, just a few hours. And that's really all it takes. Some of these examples that I just gave are not spending a lot of money at all. Maybe the flowers that my friend buys for herself can start adding up over time. But still, it's something nice that you can do for yourself that isn't doing the most. I've talked before on this channel about traveling. I love to travel, both domestically and internationally, but those trips are not always cheap, especially these days with these rising costs and airplane fees and hotels. But traveling is one of the more costly ways that I like to treat myself. That's not what this episode is, though. You can go back and listen to that episode if you'd like to hear some travel tips from me. But I find that in order to treat myself, I don't need to do anything extravagant. Like I said, going to the movies in the middle of the day. One, the tickets are actually cheaper during the day, but it's just such a small thing. I personally have been more and more finding the joy in the small things, in some of the mundane things, because that honestly is one of the ways that I maintain my sanity, but also I just like to care for myself in that way. And I find too with some of these treats, there are so many free things or other things that you might not even consider as a treat. And in the society that we live in now, with all of this hustle and bustle culture that we have, I find that we as adults don't stop enough to care for ourselves and through that maintenance, and also to treat ourselves a little bit. The hustle culture basically tells us that we have to keep going. Okay, you do your 9 to 5. Great, you're done. Now you have to do your 5 to 9 or whatever your hustle thing is after your day job. There's no time to rest, there's no time to stop. It's just go, 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 make that money or try to make that money, try to make something of yourself or whatever else society tells us. And I used to listen to that a lot. I've talked before on this podcast about how I worked in consulting for years and I never got a break. I never treated myself. Even when I took these vacations, I would never be off. I would have people trying to ping me, people expecting me to be online, them asking me questions, knowing fully that I was on vacation. But to them, and to me at the time, that's what that work took. That's what the job expected and demanded of me. So I could never even take off time off. I was always thinking about work, always. I remember one time I was at dinner with a friend. I was literally, I'm so ashamed of this, but I had my work laptop out on the table. My friend got so mad, and I don't blame her because what was I even doing? Like, I don't know what type of mindset I was in at the time. It was not a good one. I had a lot of things unfortunately going on at the time. But I look back at that and I'm just like, I'm so glad that I don't do that anymore. I'm so glad that I actually decide to take time. At that dinner with my friend, my laptop should have never been out. That should have been the time, one, for me to catch up with my friend because I didn't see her that often. And two, for me to literally, again, distract myself, learn about what's going on in my friend's life, tell her about my life. Those are ways for us to care for ourselves, even if it may not seem like a treat. Having time to just take a break is a treat that I understand not everybody gets. And that's why I value it so much because I didn't used to value that before. I didn't used to actually get that for myself. And it's just something that I have been sort of striving to try and do more and more for the benefit of my mind and for the benefit of my body. So, like I said, I've already given you a few examples, but treats can come in so many different ways, right? It could be the movies, the flowers. You could also do a lot of free things. I go to a lot of free events. Free is definitely one of my favorite words, but some ways that I treat myself, especially now that it's getting warmer out, I'm actually more willing to go out in the Northeast. There are a few museum days. If you check out your city's official website, you can probably see a lot of free events that they have there. That could be a treat. Maybe you just take an hour to go and do something. I did that a few weeks ago. I found out about a free art gallery opening near where I live, and I took an hour to just walk over there, walk through, see the arts, talk to some people that I didn't know, and then I went back and continued to do my work. And it was just nice. It just gave me a break in the middle of all of this other stuff that I was doing. So don't feel like you need to commit to something just to treat yourself. Like I said, I see it as maintenance, I see it as caring for myself. A while back, I had a guest, Sid, who talked about how he likes to call and chat with his friends as a way to practice wellness. It helps improve his mood. He feels closer to his friends as they catch up with each other on what happened during that week. He also talked about meditation as another way to treat himself. If he feels overwhelmed mentally, doing a quick guided meditation helps to clear his head and to reset. Now, these may not be what comes to your mind when you think about treating yourself. It certainly is probably not what the characters on Parks and Rec thought because they were out here to spend in the money. This just goes to show that there are so many different ways for us to treat ourselves. In the end, it really depends on you and what makes the most sense for you. The way I treat myself and the way that some of my friends treat themselves may not be the way that you choose to treat yourself, and that's okay. The thing that I really want to emphasize throughout this episode is that treating equals caring. Treating equals maintenance. You don't need to wait to accomplish something just to treat yourself. For those of us who sit all day at a desk, treating ourselves might look like taking short walks throughout the day to stretch our legs, not always just sitting at that desk. If you're afraid, oh, someone's going to Teams me, somebody's going to email me, you can take your phone and check that. You're still working, but at least you are getting that blood flowing because that's good for your physical health. Many people I work with get a coffee in the afternoon to wake themselves up. I am not a coffee drinker. I don't really consume caffeine, but that in itself is a treat. That iced coffee or that latte is a treat that gives you energy, that gives you your afternoon pick me up to be able to finish the rest of the day. So there are just so many ways that we can do these things. You don't even need to spend money on it. But you can if you want to, that's for sure. In this episode, I've talked a little bit about not unconventional ways, but just other ways that we can treat ourselves. Think about it. When I first said the phrase treat yourself, did you picture spending money in your mind? If you did, probably most of us think that. You're not alone. I think when we think of treats, we sort of tie that with something financial or us getting something, so something material. Of course, in our society, many treats cost money, whether it's as small as getting an ice cream cone on a hot summer day, or spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on new clothes or an expensive car. But there's so much more to it than that. I recognize that times have been getting harder overall, especially financially for people in this country. Maybe you're someone who used to get a monthly massage to relax, or get your nails done every 2 weeks, or even go to a sports game. Maybe you like to go to basketball games and you actually like to spend money on those tickets. But now you're thinking, I don't have the money to get season tickets for this basketball team that I really like. Or I don't have the budget to do XYZ. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you can't treat yourself. It doesn't mean that you can't even treat yourself in that way. If you can't get a massage every month because that money has to go to paying the bills, maybe you can go every 2 months. Maybe you go once a quarter. If you can't buy season tickets to go to your favorite basketball team that's in your city, maybe you pick 4 games. I don't know, just making that up where you can afford to go. That way, you're still enjoying that activity that you consider a treat for you, but you're not breaking the bank. You're still able to enjoy that time and you're still able to care for yourself and have some of that sort of maintenance for yourself. Let's say you're a parent and you decided not to take that family vacation with the kids because the hotels and flights are way too expensive and over your budget. An alternative way to treat yourself could be doing a staycation where you still are in town, but you take a day to take the kids to an amusement park near home. And treating yourself or not being able to treat yourself due to financial hardships is understandable. But I encourage you to think about alternative ways for you to still get those breaks or to get those pick me ups without feeling like you're compromising too much just to get that. Life can come at us hard for days, for months, or even years sometimes. And we might not take the time to pause for some joy. Sometimes society tells us that we need to do something in order to earn a treat. Oh, you need to finish that paper. You need to finish that project. In the widespread hustle culture that I talked about, especially in the US, it's so easy to get burned out. I have been burnt out before, many times. It's easy to reach a point in your work or in your life where you can barely think anymore because you're always on the go and you're always working or always trying to do XYZ. In those moments, I find that some people don't stop to rest. Like I mentioned, I lived this experience for years when I was in consulting, where even vacation did not stop me from working. I felt I had to get everything done. I had to respond to every message in order to deserve a break. But no more. I'm not about that life anymore. My current life, listen, I like to treat myself. Like I said, I don't spend money on treating myself all the time. I spend pretty much no money on a lot of things that I do because I like to look for free things because it's even sweeter to me when I don't have to pay for it. And when you treat yourself, even in these small ways, you're pretty much saying, I am going to take care of myself. I am going to take care of myself for these next 5 minutes, for this next hour, for the next few days, however much time you want to spend on it. I am going to treat myself because that is taking care of myself, and that is part of being an adult. Maintaining our mental health, our physical health, that is part of maintenance. That is part of taking care of ourselves. Honestly, realistically, we all have things going on, both good and not so good. But it is important to take care of ourselves. Even if you have kids, it's still very important to take care of you because if you are not at your best, if you are struggling, that is not going to help your kids as much because you're now struggling and then trying to take care of them, and it just becomes a compounded issue. We can't always be at our best, and that's understandable. That's just how life works. Like I said, it is important to find time to clear your mind, to take care of yourself. It should not be a reward to take care of yourself. It should be a requirement. And it's something that I'm trying to live by. Like I said, I don't do this perfectly. Everything is always an improvement. I could always improve in all of these things. But it is something that I started doing more and more recently. And I've seen the positive impacts that it's had on me. It's made my work better because I get breaks. If I get my little pick me up, it just makes life so much easier for me if I have the time for that. So I encourage you to think about that as you do your work, as you live your everyday life. With that, I do have some questions. What does it look like to treat yourself like someone you are responsible for and someone you're caring for? Also, what is your favorite way to treat yourself? Leave your answers in the comments because I definitely want to know. Maybe you guys will give me some ideas too. And remember, life is for the living. It is okay sometimes to slow down and to have some joy. Don't wait until the end to treat yourself because, in a way, treating yourself is part of investing in yourself. Thanks for listening to another episode of Lush Life No Labels. If this episode resonated with you, leave me a review, like and subscribe to this episode, and y'all share it with your friends, okay? Cheers to your lush life. I will see you later.